everyone, this is John Daly. I'm here with another episode of the Daily Express. I have on today my first ever return guest. Most people, after they appear on my podcast, they tell me to lose their contact information, but not this person, ladies and gentlemen. She is a conservative columnist for the Washington Examiner and a co-host of the Right Thoughts podcast. I'm talking about the one and only Kimberly Ross. How's it going today, Kimberly?
It's going pretty well. Thanks again for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Excellent, excellent. Well, a lot has happened, Kimberly, since the last time you and I talked. You may
Yes.
have heard there was a presidential election that went down, and your guy, Donald Trump, will be moving back into the White House in just a few days. You must be very excited about that. I wanted to ask you first about Trump's cabinet nominees. The confirmation hearings have already begun this week. Some of the nominees have been fairly well received, others have been more controversial. You told me right before we started, Kimberly, recording today, that you were super bummed that Matt Gaetz will not be our next Attorney General. So I'm curious what you think about some of the others, some of the actual nominees that made it this far. Do you have any major concerns?
Well, I think America can breathe a sigh of relief after seeing, no matter what you think of Pam Bondi, just her specific answers or her career or something, she's so much better than Matt Gaetz. I mean, that was purely a political, like he loves to be my cheerleader kind of pick. That I think what was that he had Gates had like was it 2 months or something of law experience after law school, and it was his father's firm. It just, I mean, he is where he needs to be at OAN as a host of his own show. I mean, that's the career trajectory we wanted for Gates. As far as the other nominees, I would say my favorite has been Marco Rubio. I think again, all of these nominees in some way have been supportive of Trump in word or deed. And of course, that plays into the fact that he is choosing them. I mean, I think that plays into every president's nomination process, of course, if they like the person and maybe if they have some personal relationship with them. But Marco Rubio specifically, I think he's a very, very staunch protector of U.S. Foreign policy, and he is happy to defend and unapologetically defend the U.S. and our interests abroad, and how that affects us at home, and how some shaky ground in certain regions of the world can come back on us if we're not careful with that and careful with our decisions as far as military and otherwise. So I think Rubio is the best nominee by far of all of them. Now, I said that on Twitter this week. And a few people were like, well, yeah, that's a really low bar if you're the best of Trump's nominees. But I do think Marco Rubio, he has been in the Senate for a while. He knows what he's talking about, and I think he will be a good voice for our country as Secretary of State. Excellent choice. Pete Hegseth, I know you've talked about this before, and I've talked about this on Twitter and everything. I do not discount his time in the military, his interest with veterans groups. He's he's a big supporter of veterans, of course, and is a great voice for them. I think both you and I know that a lot of veterans, when they come back after service or even when they're older, they don't really have a voice in the media or just in culture or something. And I think he's been a great voice for that. Does that translate to being Secretary of Defense? I don't believe it does. He doesn't have the managerial experience. He can talk pretty well. I think he's an intelligent guy. He has the education background. Basically, anyone would be proud of, but that doesn't mean that he should be placed in such an important position. And some people, if you criticize the Hegseth choice, they say, well, sure, but the DOD needs to be it needs to be raised to the ground. The generals and the others who are in there, the long career military individuals, they need to be removed. We need people who aren't concerned with their, I don't know, legacy or their I don't know, popularity in the country or something. And sure, there do need to be changes at the DOD. Should we put Hegseth in charge of that? Essentially a media personality. I heard someone say he's more like a Trump avatar than anything else as far as his spot in the DOD would be. I hope for the best for him since he will be confirmed, I'm pretty sure, or I think he was maybe last night. I hope for the best, of course, and I hope for the best for all these nominees because I am pro America. but I don't think he was the best choice. And I think it was more a Trump likes what he said, and then the fact that he's a veteran and works for veterans groups that kind of segued into the nomination process. My least favorite nominees out of all of them, easily Tulsi Gabbard and RFK Jr. And RFK Jr. is a nut, okay? He is an absolute nut. This guy has no business being in charge of he has no business being a secretary of anything, in charge of any governmental agency, a sort of the last stop along the way in terms of making decisions and everything. This guy in National Review had an excellent article about this, I think 2 weeks ago. He's a Democrat. Okay, first of all, he has been back and forth on so many things. Obama was interested in choosing him for energy. I don't know if it was energy secretary or something concerning, the energy production in this country. He wanted to choose him to be some sort of head of that. But one thing, well, several things that bother me about RFK Jr. He even in 2024, when he was still hoping to have some sort of chance at the presidential not nomination, but just winning the presidency, which he was never going to do, he said that he was for abortion up until the moment of birth, all 9 months. No matter if you think he does great on other issues concerning, I don't know, vaccinations or the things that are in our food or something, wanting someone in the Trump administration who is so pro-abortion, he's actually to the left of plenty Democrats, is a wild, wild thing. And it all goes back to the fact that he's been so complimentary of Trump and said so many things about him. And then people in the MAGA crowd believe, oh, he's all about changing the government and deep state and going after that and everything. No, he's a far left maniac. And add on top of that, he thinks vaccinations cause autism, and he wants to go after them. And there's no scientific evidence. In fact, it's been disproven many times that vaccinations don't cause autism. We don't need a crunchy sort of person in the government like that. I mean, that term crunchy, like you're all into natural stuff, that is fine. But vaccinations are good. I mean, I don't really care what people say. I support the COVID vaccinations because it doesn't mean you're not going to get it, but you have a less likelihood of getting COVID. But I think people's like of him is because he has said so many things post-COVID that they appreciate about, like lockdowns or just the vaccinations in general. And they're like, yeah, he must be our guy because he's on our side when it comes to all this stuff. No, he's not. He doesn't have any clear understanding of what he's talking about, but he says it loudly and he says it frequently, so people think he's a guy who should be in charge and he shouldn't. And then
So you're
Tulsi,
saying that you're kind of on the fence when it comes to RFK
I'm
Jr.?
totally on the fence with him, definitely. No, Tulsi Gabbard, I mean, you know this well. She has been so complimentary of dictators like Bashar al-Assad and Putin, and I know people on the right have so many different opinions when it comes to Ukraine and that conflict there. And you don't have to agree with Zelensky or domestic policy in Ukraine to understand that Russia is the aggressor in that situation. We should not be on Russia's side in the situation. And Gabbard has made it clear in her statements in recent years that she kind of errs on the side of dictators in the world with whom we are not in line with. And I don't think anyone like that should be in the position she's been nominated for. Additionally, and I've written articles about this before, and I keep bringing this up, but she's not a conservative. If you look at her ratings with the right to life, or even her ratings when it comes to gun control, she's more for gun control than she is allowing Americans to have unfettered access when it comes to the Second Amendment. So should she be in that position? No. And again, it comes back to the fact that she has said nice things about Trump, and she's shared enough criticisms about Democrats that people on the right are like, oh, she doesn't like her enemy, that means we like her. But that's not the standard. That shouldn't be the standard for how things are. Just because they say something about the people you don't like doesn't mean that they're conservative or they're qualified or their reasoning abilities are to the level they need to be for such an important position in our government. So those are my very on the fence feelings about these individuals.
No, I largely agree with everything you said. Cash Patel is another one for me that I would add to
Right.
that list. But I personally think foreign policy and national security are crucially important, especially right now at this point in our history. And the idea, like you said, that we would even consider putting a Putin apologist or an Assad apologist in one of these positions is just insane to me. And it's pretty telling that state-run media in Russia is cheering on these types of selections. Gabbard
Right.
and Patel, they're, oh, this is fantastic. And I mean, to me, that should send up some red flags for sure. But no, and it's funny. I have some friends in the military or previously military veterans who I've talked to them about Pete Hegseth, and they're saying like you, they appreciate his service and everything, but they know just people they've worked with, also veterans that are far more qualified to do that. Just people they know offhand, and it's quite a job. I think he would be overseeing over 3 million people, something crazy like that, and just doesn't have the skill set or the experience for it. But let's move to another question here. So President-elect Donald Trump has been saying, really for the past few weeks, I guess, that he wants to take over Greenland, and the Panama Canal. He didn't rule out using U.S. military force if necessary. He also plans to absorb Canada as our 51st state. Kimberly, as a globalist neocon yourself, are you excited about our country's plans to conquer foreign territory as it moves forward in its quest for world domination?
Well, I mean, really, who wants Canada? Do we really want
Oh,
Canada?
oh, Brian
Canada,
Adams. Brian
Can-
Adams.
Canada is beautiful. I've yet to visit there, but from what I've seen, it's beautiful. I do have a trip planned to Montreal in a few years. So
Oh,
Canada is beautiful, of course. No, but more seriously, I do think this is just Trump saying what he wants, whenever he wants, to I don't know if it's to like please the base who loves him or just kind of throw things out that he has in his mind or something. We're not buying Greenland. We're not annexing it. We're not doing anything to Canada. Marco Rubio brought up the Panama Canal and the foreign policy concerns when it comes to that, and that's certainly worth discussing as far as how much it affects our country, the trade route, and just the other aspects of the security surrounding the Panama Canal. That's one thing. But we're not doing anything with Canada. Canadians don't want us to do anything. We don't need to do anything. And we don't need to do anything with Greenland either. And I think Eric Erickson, maybe a week ago or something, he was like, this kind of thing, when Trump talks about this, it's great in terms of riling up the media, but nothing's ever going to happen with it. There's nothing we're not going to see a day when Canada's another state. I mean, another territory, whatever. Same thing with Greenland. I think he's doing it just because he likes to say these bombastic things and kind of have the focus and spotlight on him. But it's not going to happen. I mean, I don't know what you think about that, but
well,
I don't see it occurring for real.
yeah, no, I think that's right. But what gets me, Kimberly, is that there actually is a serious argument, and it's been around for a while, that the United States should try and peacefully acquire Greenland for a number of reasons.
Yeah,
Jonah
yeah.
Goldberg, I know, has written a lot about this. But like so many other things, Trump's framing is over the top and it's cartoonish and it's meant to get attention. It kind of sounds like he's playing a game of Risk, that old board game. And when people when he suggests that he might forcibly take Greenland, a NATO ally, um, I think all it does is just kind of piss people off, people
Yes.
outside of America. Um, Boris Johnson, I saw an interview with him just a couple days ago. He former Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, but he made the point, and I don't think he was taking this seriously either. But he made the point that if Trump tried to forcibly take Greenland, the UK would actually have to declare war on the United States per their NATO agreement. But one thing you didn't bring up, Kimberly, that I'm curious about your take on. Do you think on some level that Trump is saying these things to sort of try and impress Vladimir Putin, who actually is working to extend Russia's boundaries by force. He's all, well, you did this, but look what I'm doing. It's almost like the villains in what's that movie with Morgan Freeman and Ashley Judd, Kiss the Girls, where they're
Oh,
sort of like bragging, "Oh, this is what I can do. This is
yeah.
I don't know. Is there anything to that? Do you think?
I mean, perhaps. I think Trump really enjoys speaking very largely and forcefully and kind of threateningly, without actually backing up like real world, real life actions when he's in the position to do so. I think he definitely wants to, and he should want to stand up against Putin. Whether this is part of that, I'm not sure. It could be a little bit, because I know that Greenland, Russia has some interest in that, and some connection to it and everything. Um, but as far as if he's actually doing something to stand up against Russia as the aggressor in terms of talking about these things, I would say no, because I don't think Trump thinks too far ahead when he's talking about what he's going to do in the future, even in the next week or something. I think he just likes to say things. And again, he's very much a weather vane in terms of he knows what his base will like, and at the same time, he knows what the media will love to pounce on and love to talk about for days on end, news cycles on end. So he really enjoys being in the spotlight. Does it mean it's going to happen in real life? No. Is he going to talk about it for a while? Yeah, because he really enjoys that.
Well, sometimes it's weird because it's sometimes easy to forget this, Kimberly, but Joe Biden actually is still our president. I think he's got the weekend left, so that's exciting. Live it up, I guess. But in terms of his legacy, what do you think Joe Biden, will be primarily known for?
Oh gosh. I think the first thing that came to mind when you shared your questions ahead of time with me, was that Biden was really like he was the stopgap measure in terms of keeping Trump from having a second term right after his first term and everything. And all the Democratic Party hopes in the entire world were placed on Biden's shoulders. Not necessarily a great candidate or anything, but he, has kind of been in Washington, D.C. What he's saying, his closing remarks, 50 years or something he's been in D.C. That's longer than I've been alive. That's quite a long time. But he's always wanted to be the president. And he got there because he was Obama's vice president. Obama frankly, he needed an old white guy in the VP spot. He picked Biden. Biden's a well-known name in the Democratic Party. He sailed through as VP, didn't really do anything of note. And then his goal was still being president. He saw that Trump was trying to get a second term. And again, the Democratic Party looked at him as the least threatening option in the sphere of candidates, so they went with him. Again, not exactly a great candidate, played himself off as a moderate, but his presidency has been both bothersome and lackluster. Among many other things, his foreign policy has been a huge, huge debacle in terms of the Afghanistan pullout. He's terrible on border and immigration, and you can criticize Trump's plans for the border, but you cannot say that Biden has done well with the border. He appointed Kamala as the border czar, and she has done nothing in terms of being the border czar, and sort of said she wasn't the border czar, and then sort of said, okay, yeah, I was a border czar. Hasn't done anything with that. In terms of energy, he's wanted to push back on the coal and other resources that plenty of people in the country are supportive of and for. He's not done well with cultural issues in terms of being very open to the progressive side of his party. Again, even though he's kind of played himself off as like more of a, not so much a centrist, but more of like a moderate, comparing himself to the more left-leaning members of his party. And just a host of other things. Just even, I mean, we all know how the media pushed him as not even capable to finish out his presidency, but capable to do 4 more years. And they told Americans that we were basically nuts to think that Biden would not be able to serve 4 more years. And then after Kamala is switched in and she becomes a candidate, they eventually, the media, some people at least eventually in the media say, okay, well, yeah, his cognitive and physical decline was concerning. So yes, you were right when Americans and other people in the media had said this all along. So it's his legacy is one of someone who got into the position he was in out of sheer dumb luck and being standing in the same spot for decades and decades, being kind of like the least threatening guy and like the okay choice to push back against Trump. But his presidency, I mean, so many people who, of course, unsurprisingly, are going to say he's been a good president, keep saying he's been one of the best presidents, and he's not. And just today, the Biden account on Twitter, I'm not so sure if he knows how much is going on right now, but he said, I basically declare the Equal Rights Amendment ratified, and it's law of the land. And it wasn't ratified, and the deadline has passed. And he's still saying it's the ERA amendment is good to go, and it's not. I mean, it's wild, wild kind of like, and I said this a few, like an hour ago or something on Twitter. It's really the end of his presidency, and maybe even the last half of his presidency has been like old man yelling at clouds, wanting to make sure people hear him kind of thing. And he didn't do a good job. He's not going to go down as one of the best presidents. And he's just kind of like fading into like hopefully finally retirement at the end of his presidency now. And it's just frankly, it's sad because he's not physically and mentally capable enough to do the job, at least the last 2 years of his presidency for sure. And I think both him, I don't know how much he had in terms of control over the decision, but his handlers and his wife and other people kind of pushing him along to continue on. I really think it's just a sad end to a presidency that is kind of an accidental one in the first place.
No, I largely agree with that. I think, that the big part I think that people will remember, I think there's actually two. So the big part I think is putting Donald Trump back in the White House for all the reasons we talked about, is a fit, Biden's fitness to serve, his choice to run again for reelection. But I think with Afghanistan will end up being a bigger part of his legacy than people probably realize right now. I mean, we've already seen what's happened there, especially women, but really everybody in Afghanistan. It also encouraged Putin to pull the trigger on Ukraine at the time. He'd been wanting to that full scale invasion or that wide scale invasion for a long time, but that was sort of the catalyst for it. I think that decision, and again, it's unfortunate because both Biden and Trump were going to do the same thing, regardless of who
Right.
won in 2020. But I think that really made the world a more dangerous place than it needed to be, and I think we're going to be continuing to see some aftershocks from that. But let's pivot to a category that I think is a little more fun, Kimberly. Social media. I wanted to start with Mark Zuckerberg's fairly recent decision to end Meta's fact-checking program, which a number of organizations, including media organizations, independently participated in. One of the Zuck's reasons for ending it is that he believed, or at least this is what he said, that he believed it had become too politically biased, which I think makes sense based on, you had a lot of a lot of partisan outlets that I think were probably maybe not
Sure.
partisan, but politically leaning outlets that were probably involved in that. But personally, I don't think I ever saw an example of Meta's fact checking, or if I did, maybe I didn't realize it. Maybe we weren't supposed to see it. It was just removed if it was
Mhm.
decided that something was not didn't meet the standards of being factual. But some are suggesting that Zuckerberg did this to get on Trump's good side. He met with Trump just a day before the announcement, and there's been other evidence of that lately. Zuckerberg kind of schmoozing up to Trump. Kimberly, what are your thoughts on this whole thing? Are the world's big social media moguls, like including Elon Musk, now rallying around Trump, similar to how the Legion of Doom rallied around Lex Luthor?
They,
Old school DC, for those people who don't know what I'm talking about, DC Comics.
I'm sure that, I mean, Elon loves Trump, and he is a similar sort of personality. He's well known, has a lot of money. He I don't know, he shares his opinions a lot. And as a side note, I think Elon Musk is brilliant when it comes to technology and Tesla and rockets and like all that, the SpaceX, everything. It's fantastic. But I don't think he's that great at running Twitter. And he was the guy who had enough money in his little wallet to buy Twitter, which no one else really does. But I don't think he's great at running it. But as far as like Zuckerberg and Facebook, I feel like I'm kind of, I don't know if you feel like this too. You're an outsider among people on the right, because I have not hated Zuckerberg as much as I feel like so many other people have hated Zuckerberg. I view Twitter and Facebook as private companies. They're social media apps and sites, sure. They're private companies still. And the argument that allowing anyone or anything on your site is what you should be doing because it's a free speech issue. Well, it's not really a free speech issue. The government is not coming to me and saying I can't tweet or post certain things. It's not the same kind of free speech issue we think of when we talk about just First Amendment rights when it comes to other things in the world. It's still a private business. You don't have to log on to Facebook and Twitter. No one is forcing me to do that. I'm sure people would prefer I don't log in sometimes because I say things that they don't like. Same with you, John Daly. You're a rabble rouser. But no one's forcing you to log in. And if you don't like the rules that and the boundaries and things that Elon Musk or Zuckerberg set up for their company, that's fine. You don't have to log in. But again, it's not like a free speech issue. You're not being oppressed because of certain things. I do think, however, it's good to remove sort of change focus as Zuckerberg has done with the fact checking. I don't think confirmation bias and people who lean one way more than the other when it comes to fact checking and allowing their personal opinions to infect their work, I don't think that's great. Personally, I kind of really enjoy community notes on Twitter because like when Marjorie Taylor Greene tweets that they can stop the California wildfires just if they do cloud seeding, and they are not doing cloud seeding and they're trying to keep the fires going, and she's talking about the Jews. There's a community note there and people can add actual scientific data explaining what cloud seeding is and how Marjorie Taylor Greene, again, knows nothing about what she's talking about. So I do enjoy community notes. I think moving kind of that direction is a wise choice for Facebook. I don't know that Facebook is like, I think people get, I don't know, they get so concerned with Facebook as if it is like controlling like how people are discussing things online and social discourse. And it's not really, it's just another social media site. It's not, I mean, Twitter's not number one on the list of social media sites. And Facebook, sure, it has an effect on how people discuss things, but again, it's not the end of the world. If you don't like it, you don't have to do it. You can complain all you want about it. And I've been on Facebook, oh my gosh, I've been on Facebook since I think 2006, 2007 or something. I don't, again, like you were saying, if there's been some sort of removal of information or posts, I have not really seen it. And I have shared plenty of political stuff on Facebook. Personally, I haven't noticed anything. I don't know if it was just behind the scenes and stuff. But more generally, moving in the direction to where it's not so biased in like a fact-checking sense is a good thing. I don't really care if Zuckerberg becomes close to Trump. He probably wants to keep him on his good side, so Trump won't tweet about him or post on Truth Social about him a lot or something. But no, I think the discussions about social media and how it really affects how people talk and affects freedom, I think is overblown. And I forget who posted it. I think it was Sarah Isker with the Dispatch. She has a tweet from maybe a couple of years ago, and I refer to it often. But the number of people on Facebook and Twitter, essentially Twitter, who the number of account holders is a large amount, but the number of people who consistently use Twitter is a small amount, then the number who consistently use Twitter who talk about politics is an even smaller amount. So the kind of effect that we think we're having when we go on social media is, I think, less than what it actually is. And people need to understand that.
Well, it's funny you mentioned the community notes. I like it too. It always cracks me up when Elon gets taken down by a community note on his own platform because he spreads a lot of nonsense out there. I mean, we both
It
know that.
does.
But I used to do it sort of on my own, little community notes under my friends' political Facebook posts, saying this isn't true. They don't like, nobody appreciates that. People do not like that when you try to
I
fact
think
check their
that's
political posts.
great. I think you
It
should
is,
do that. We need John Daly to be in charge of community notes. That would be great.
I think so too. I think that would be good. I don't know, but I try to sort of, and I don't do it anymore because it doesn't do any good. You just get people mad, friends mad at you. But speaking of for Twitter or X, whatever we want to call it, Kimberly, you have a good sized following over there, which I like to point out to people, which you like to point out to people actually, but I'm bringing it up for the fact you have about 35,000 followers. I track that number very closely, Kimberly, because
Oh
it's
yeah.
about 5 times what mine is. So I'm trying to say, like, how can I get? Because I don't know. We've probably been on for, well, you've probably been on a little bit longer, but still, I've been
Mhm.
on for quite a while, and it's just that for every two new followers I get like three that back out. So
Yeah.
it's not on a great trajectory right now. But I wanted to ask you about your Twitter habits and your practices. I'm curious if there are certain people on the platform, because I think about this a fair amount, and maybe nobody else does. But I'm curious if there are certain individuals, high profile individuals on the platform who you won't retweet or repost, even if they make a good point, and if so, why is that?
Oh, yes, I'm sure there are some individuals. It would have to be something I look at as like I'm going along throughout the day and like tweeting and stuff. But there are, and this just happened the other day, there are individuals who say something good, and I'm like, I will like that tweet because people can't look at likes now, but I'm not going to retweet it because I hate everything else they say and they're just ridiculous. But yeah, there are people who I don't want to admit that I agree with, but they make good points now and then. But I've been on Twitter since 2012, and I don't think you know this. I'm sure I've said it before on Twitter though. But I joined in 2012 because I was going to talk about the 2012 presidential election. And then I was never going to use the site again because it's such a dumb site and who wants to be on here? Well, like almost 13 years later, and I'm still on here and I'm still talking about everything and still retweeting people and still arguing with people. But um, no, one of the things that kind of cracks me up is certain people who blocked me on Twitter. I'm pretty proud of the Laura Loomer block, the Nick Fuentes block, the Roger Stone block, and the Jack Posobiec block. But then also what cracks me up is Roseanne Barr blocked me and Scott Baio blocked me. I don't
Oh,
think I've ever
Chachi, you got knocked down by Chachi.
the 1980s people who are now huge MAGA people don't like me. That's shocking. I've never shared that I dislike Trump ever. No, I don't know why Bayo blocked me. But then there's also people like Sean Davis, who I think has blocked everyone at this point,
Me too.
and Molly Hemingway, whose husband follows me. But I'm sure I got into an argument years ago with Molly about Trump or something. But it's just across the board, kind of this swath of people who are really loudly pro-Trump or even far right who block me, and it's such a mystery why they block me. I don't know. I don't
Oh
think I
no,
criticize.
you're so delightful out there, and you don't create controversy or anything, and I'm not sure, but no, it's funny. You just mentioned some of the people that blocked you. Same people: Sean Davis, Molly Hemingway. I got Megan McCain blocked me. I know you guys are tight,
No, we're
but
not. No, that is a lie.
no, I should
Oh, my
explain that.
tweet
Yeah,
once. She stole a tweet once, like the full tweet. And someone showed me, and then I replied to her under the tweet of mine she had stolen. I was like, you stole my tweet. And then she deleted it. But she hasn't blocked me. But I will say she is a pretty big supporter of Tulsi Gabbard. I know they're like personal, like close real life friends and everything. But so she doesn't like when conservatives criticize Tulsi, even though we're not criticizing Megan's friendship with her, of course. We're criticizing other aspects of Gabbard's opinions about foreign policy and leaders and everything. So, gosh, Twitter is such a mess. But I'm never logging off. But it's such a crazy
well,
place.
it is, and that's funny. You said you got on in 2012. I came
Yeah.
on the same way. I was never had no interest in Twitter, and then that was when I got accepted by my publisher for my first book, and they were really pushing get on social media. build a brand, talk about your books, all that stuff. They did not have politics in mind at all. They just wanted me. So I created the account, was doing some book stuff, and then I got sucked into it. And yeah, I'm still there and talk about politics and culture a lot more than I talk about my book stuff now.
And
But
you call me a communist, but I'm used to that at this point.
that's right. Well, it's funny. It's funny when you kind of some of the other people that block. I get blocked by celebrities a fair amount too. The guy that played Bill Buchanan on 24, he blocked
Yeah.
me. I think he's a great actor, but he is sort of a political nut. I'm sure I weighed in on something and he got upset. William Shatner blocked me.
Why did he
Um,
block you?
okay, and I've told this story. People have probably heard it before, but um, when I was a little kid, I was at a car show where William Shatner and James Doohan, who played Scotty, they were both there, meet and greet sort of thing. I stood in this long line to meet William Shatner. I was actually pretty close to the front of the line, but we started through. I asked for an autograph. He was like, won't do that. And I was like, oh. And then I was like, well, and then I was trying to ask him a question, and his like security guy kind of pushed me aside, so I got kind of ushered off. And so I make that joke every now and then that I got, with the William Shatner, he stiffed me back then. And but anyway, I was telling that story on Twitter one day, just as a joke, because I'm not emotionally scarred by it or anything. And someone tagged William Shatner in it, and everybody piled on him about him dissing me when I was a kid, and then he got mad at me, and then he blocked me. So which is terrible because I love William Shatner. I love this. I love T.J. Hooker. I love Star Trek. All that stuff was fantastic. Will Wheaton too, another Star Trek guy. He blocked
He
me.
blocked
So
me. Yeah, yeah. Will Wheaton did
yeah,
because I told him I said shut up Wesley to him once and then he blocked me. But yeah.
he does not like that. From what I
No,
understand, that has become. I think
he
he's
was an
actually made it a
annoying
policy.
little kid on the show, and I could not stand him. They added him for who knows why, whatever reason. And I told him shut up Wesley once, and then he blocked me. But he's a really far left, kind of crazy person.
He is.
I
He
don't
is
know
for
how
sure.
much Shatner talks about politics, but I haven't really interacted with him. But he hasn't blocked me. But how dare he be mean to little John Daly?
That's right. That's right.
Terrible.
And yeah, no. And then anyway, I don't want to dwell too much on on Shatner. I do think he actually leans right politically. Someone said I think might have been Jonah Goldberg said that he was actually a National Review subscriber, so I assume he still sort of leans right.
Yeah.
But I thought that was sort of interesting. But yeah, no. As far as when we first started talking about this, people who yeah, I don't feel comfortable retweeting when even when they say good things. A lot of the anti-Trump crowd, they kind of annoy me a little bit. I
Yeah.
think I think you're probably a little more tolerant of them than I am, but it's just like it's not. They almost annoy me almost as much as like the Jen Rubin and the
Yeah.
Max Boot types that just
Yes.
completely change everything. But you have these
Yes.
people that'll will always clarify. I didn't vote for Trump. I'm not a Trump guy, but attack anybody on the right who says anything critical about Trump, and that just like, oh, you guys, it's just, but
I don't know if you've noticed, I mean, I'm sure you've noticed this or something, but what's interesting to me is the Trump people and the DeSantis people. I don't know if you like have this in your timeline or something. I follow plenty of DeSantis people, but the Trump and DeSantis people fighting almost constantly because the DeSantis people will, they still like DeSantis, whether they voted for Trump or not, who knows? But they'll talk about how DeSantis would have been a better choice, which I think he would have, even though I have, criticisms of DeSantis and everything. And then the Trump people will be like, well, he didn't win. Well, no, he didn't win because the GOP is drunk on Trump. They're still drunk on him. The DeSantis people will come back and it is like vicious fighting. I just kind of sit back and I'm like, this is a very odd little side note after like what happened in 2024. There's still this infighting, and I don't know if DeSantis is ever going to run again for president. I don't know if there's even a chance he would do better. I think he might have just had his shot. It never is going to happen again. But just the vitriol that's between the Trump and DeSantis camps, it's kind of strange. There's all these little camps on the right that hate each other, and it's very odd to see.
I saw you comment on that about the infighting. You called it between these two. I don't see that much in my timeline for whatever reason. Maybe it depends on who I'm following or whatever. I believe you. I just haven't experienced it much. But we were talking about getting blocked by certain people. I was curious, Kimberly. I'm sure you blocked a number of people as well, or maybe not. But
Yeah.
either way, I'm yeah, I'm curious. What does it take? What does someone have to do in order to get blocked by you? Because I've been trying my best to get blocked by
Yeah.
you for quite some time, and it hasn't happened yet.
I'm sorry to say you're never going to earn a block because it's just not going to happen. Um, First of all, because I like you and you're fun, but generally to get a block, you have to be like very vicious, not just disagreeing with me, but like vicious, vicious, or call me names or something. Or like someone said a few weeks ago, they were like talking about my kids in reply to me. You're gonna get block, 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 block if you do those things. So I would say you have to go pretty far to get a block. You have to be very mean and terrible and just thinking I'm the worst person for having an opinion. I do use mute a lot because people will keep certain people who I don't really want to block, but they keep replying to me. I'll just mute them. It just makes things easier. And I think in the past, I've been more hesitant to use block or mute. And I mean, just use it. It's curate your feed how you want, want it. If I want to mute John Daly someday, after he calls me a communist again, I might do that, but you're never going to get a block. No, you're not going to get a mute either. Don't worry.
It's funny for me with the blocking and stuff. I mean, I mute a lot of people too because it's funny when you do that, and then there's a conversation that continues on with other people under your tweet, and you're only seeing one side of it. It's just kind of that part's kind of funny to me. But yeah, I just blocking it just sometimes it just has how I'm feeling that day. I mean, I get a lot of I'll put something, if I say something even moderately critical about Trump, I'm sure you've seen the same things. You get people replying with like Photoshop pictures of Joe Biden in a diaper or something.
Yeah,
And I'm like,
yeah,
what
yeah.
am I supposed to be like a Biden fan? I don't get it, but it's none of it makes so yeah, I'll just anyone who's obviously a bot or obviously just some
Right,
nameless troll out there,
right.
I've sort of lost patience. But Kimberly, last time you were on this podcast, and this goes back to Twitter, I reviewed a very long list of things that you do not like, that you have shared with people that you do not like.
Oh,
Um, I did leave one thing out,
no.
however, and I have seen you bring this up again lately. I'm just going to read a tweet you put out the other day. This is from Kimberly. One of the things that annoys me about modern society is the term pet parent. You are not a parent. You own a pet. You may love that pet. I love my pet, but taking care of the needs of an animal is in no way similar to raising and loving a human child. Stop
Mhm.
it, you freaks, or I will beat the holy hell out of every last one of you. Okay, I might have made that last part up. I better clarify that. But the sentiment, I'm sure. So,
Yes.
but you do have strong feelings about this, Kimberly. So I am wondering, when you were a child, by any chance, did your parents show the family cat or the family dog preferential treatment over you?
No, they didn't. We never had a dog. We only had cats and hamsters and gerbils and
Excuse me.
fish. And we have a cat right now. But I put this up because I have two kids and they're 8 and 4. And so I'm in like still the very beginning stages of parenthood. And you are much, much older than me, and your kids are much older than my children. So you're more of an expert in parenting. But I was just thinking the other day how, and it seems especially as of late with the declining fertility rates and a bunch of Zoomers saying that they don't want children, things like this, and kind of the rise of being pet parents and having fur babies and everything, that you're not a parent if you have a pet. And I feel like that's kind of a controversial thing to say. The other day at the store, I saw a dog sweater that said "My favorite child," and I think it's funny. I mean, I laughed when I saw that, but really, people have been, whether it's because they haven't found a perfect partner, not a perfect partner, but a partner, or if they just don't want children or something, they're kind of a lot of people. It feels like are replacing them with animals and pets, and I'm all for pets. I love my cat, but my cat is not my third child. My cat is my cat. And I think it's okay to not call yourself a pet parent and not say that you have a fur baby because you don't. It's just an animal. Um, and again, I think people really don't like when someone says this because they have an emotional attachment to their animal, which I do too. I love my cat, but he's not a kid in any way, shape, or form. He does not rise to that level. So that's why I said it. And of course, I like stirring the pot just a little bit on Twitter. So
Well, it's funny. I can't really talk much about this topic, or I don't feel comfortable talking about it because I may or may not be married to someone who treats their pets as children. So I just
oh
want
no,
to sort of, I wanted to get your take, Kimberly, but I probably might just reserve my own thoughts on the topic.
I do like that you shared a picture on Twitter, I think, right? Of your dog in a red coat,
Yes, a red hoodie.
like hoodie. Okay, that was really cute. I loved it.
That's all my wife. She buys all these outfits. They look great. I mean, I don't have a problem with it. It's funny because we have three dogs. Two of them actually like to be dressed up. The other ones will tolerate it with treats, but that's about it. But my last question, Kimberly, is about political writing. Both of you and I are political columnists, not communists. Columnists. We had a little confusion the other day about this, but we both write for right of center publications, I would call them. But a while back, I wrote for, this is just sort of a personal experience. I wrote for Pace Magazine for about 6 months. It was very much a left of center website. I think the editorial board may have even endorsed Bernie Sanders for president that year. But I was their lone conservative writer, and I really enjoyed writing for an audience that, in many cases, hadn't even considered conservative ideas and perspectives beyond, at least beyond the caricatures kind of created by the left. But I'm curious, would you ever be interested in writing for a publication that is very ideologically opposed to the things you believe in?
Yes, I would. I think it would be a great opportunity to kind of let your conservative voice come out on a platform or on a site or in a magazine or publication or something that is generally opposed to what you believe. I think that actually takes more bravery than writing for a site that kind of agrees with everything you think. And what comes to mind first for me is Ross Douthat. He's a columnist for the New York Times, and I know this is bad, but I have a New York Times subscription. I know that's
I,
terrible.
I do too. I do too. David
Oh,
French, when he came on, I wanted to read his
yeah.
column, so
Mhm.
I got one.
I enjoy reading French and Douthat, even if I don't agree with him on everything. But especially Douthat, he has a strong conservative voice, and I find myself agreeing with him most of the time. And he's in the pages of the New York Times. Now, some people who just totally reject any sort of reading or going to a site that is against them ideologically, they won't read Douthat because, oh, he's at the New York Times. It's actually good he's at the New York Times because people who would never consider conservative points of view or even centrist points of view would read him because he's next to columnists who they already agree with. So I think it's a great opportunity to write for a site that you may not completely or even totally not align with or something. It makes me think of, and people will bring this up all the time on Twitter. When I left Red State in 2019, me and Andrea Caruso, who wrote for Red State as well, we did an exit piece and we had it published at the Bulwark. And this was in like, I think kind of like the beginning days of the Bulwark. I don't think they had been around for very long. But people since then are like, well, you write for the Bulwark. Well, first of all, I don't write for the Bulwark. One byline is not writing, contributing for them. Also, so what? If I have my voice at a site or on a site that I don't agree with often, or even, I mean, maybe now and then I might agree with them, but what is the problem with that? As long as I'm allowed to share my voice and I'm not being told that I can't talk about certain things or share certain opinions or perspectives or something, then I am all for it. I mean, I feel like a political writer's dream would to be at the New York Times. And if you're a conservative, I mean, they need more conservative voices over there. So that kind of thing should be encouraged, not discouraged, in my opinion.
I think that's exactly right. I mean, that is, uh, that I became an admirer of Bernie Goldberg a long time, long before I ever wrote for his website. And he was always sort of making that point where, one of the best ways to go after media bias is, for these companies, these media institutions to hire people that have different thoughts, have different views. And I think that's a good thing. It's funny you mentioned the Bulwark. I have the almost the exact same experience. I did one piece for them probably right around the same time you wrote for them. They hadn't really defined themselves yet. They were sort of, they were definitely a center right publication. They didn't have good feelings about Donald Trump, but there wasn't really an underlying theme yet. But I wrote a column. I still stand by it as well. But yeah, I would have, and I'd have no problem writing for them now, even though I disagree with some of the people over there. Some people I agree with, some people I don't. They're more, I think, a mixed bag that they get credit for, just because a lot of people there do have very similar views on Trump, and some have sort of pulled further to the left. So yeah, I get, but yeah, it's funny to me because I used to have, and I think you still do. You have that in your Twitter bio that you wrote
Yeah.
for the Bulwark. I used to do it and it became so distracting because I only wrote one column. I just had a bunch of them, written. And it's funny
Yeah.
because everybody would always come after me saying, "Oh, you're at the Bulwark." Nobody would ever, next to it, Paste Magazine with the Bernie Sanders website. Nobody on the right ever gave me a hard time about that, which was just, yeah. So it's just crazy. But yeah,
Like,
no,
if I could, sorry, I
oh,
was
go
going to
ahead, go
say
ahead.
one more point. I was talking to um, someone recently, and they had been, over the years, they had been kind of like watching Fox News, reading Fox News, only reading like Daily Wire and all that stuff. And over the years, they said that they now read from a wide variety of sources because even if it doesn't change their opinion, they're better able to put a coherent argument together, and they're better able to argue their opinion, and it kind of cements what they think about an issue. I think every American, sure, everyone has their political biases, personal biases, cultural biases, but I think it behooves everyone to read from a variety of sources. I will read the New York Times, I will read Daily Caller, CNN, and Daily Wire, and Washington Examiner, and I mean everything. Dispatch, and Dispatch is great, but everywhere. And I think if we did that, if we all did that a little bit more, I think that would kind of tone down the animosity we all have, because I don't think putting your blinders on, whether you're on the left or right, and strictly consuming media and journalism that is only aligning with you, is not a healthy way to approach a subject. And I feel like bringing that opinion up, people are like, oh no, I want to read what I already agree with. Is that doesn't help your mind and your arguments grow? I mean, in my opinion. So I think everyone should do a broad array of sources.
I think that's very well said. I completely agree. Well, Kimberly, you've been very generous with your time. I want to go ahead and wrap things up because I know you're a busy person. You got lots of stuff going on. I want to thank you for coming on the Daily Express. It was fun having you on. Hopefully, we won't get a bunch of people unsubscribing like last time you were on. But no, that's a joke. That's a joke. But you can everybody. What's that?
No, I can imagine that maybe some people didn't like it.
No, I mean, if people if
Oh,
people can
it's so
if people can
common.
tolerate me, they can tolerate you, Kimberly. So they won't quit over, they won't leave over you. But people can read your columns, of course, on the Washington Examiner. They can also listen to you on the Right Thoughts podcast. Anything else you have in the works right now that you want to share?
Working on a magazine feature for the Examiner magazine about Luigi Mangione, so that should
No,
be fun. Yeah. Mhm.
I'm not a fan of that guy, Kimberly. There's a lot.
Not a
That guy has a
fan.
lot of fans. I'm not a
No,
big fan.
no, not a fan.
All right, all right, Kimberly. Thanks again, and you have a great day. All right.
Thank you for having me.